this alternative media, including YouTube, do serve a great purpose. And if used correctly, they can greatly increase your wealth. What am I talking about? Am I becoming a slick sales... No. A slick snake salesman. A slick snake oil salesman. There we go. A slick snake oil salesman. You gotta say that fast. Quickly. Okay. So, what I'm talking about is every few years, a way of investing or trading pops up that's very original, very unique, and requires a visionary way of thinking to take advantage of it. In addition to having a visionary way of thinking, usually it's something that requires a little bit of legwork. So here are some examples. The first one with gold and silver is the best opportunity was over 12 years ago. Back when if you wanted to buy bullion, there weren't ads popping up saying buy bullion. Right after the dot-com bust, I was saying, wow, gold and silver, I'll bet these things will be a great investment, but, you know, there was no easy way to buy it, so I put it on the back shelf, right? There were no ETFs. There were no in-your-face bullion ads. So it was like a little bit of work, so I said, no one's interested, therefore it's probably not that great of an investment. Well, duh! It's the exact opposite! That's what you buy! You buy when it takes more work to buy the gold and silver. Because then, when it's easier to buy the gold and silver, there's more people buying it and the price goes up. I had it so backwards. I was like, well, you know, it's so easy to buy some of these things, so therefore that's the right time to get in. No, you get in when there's it's less known. So I kind of got that backwards, and you know, a few years later, I'm like, wow, did the price of gold and silver had taken off from where I saw it was like a, you know, at their floors, and I said, well, you know, still like it, all these things. Okay, so here are some other examples, and these require thinking out of the box. Remember in the 80s, how domain names came up? Like, for example, in the wild west of the internet, when there were almost no websites, you could buy a website for just about everything. When the internet first came out, you could buy Coke.com, right? You could buy all these things, and then for very, very tiny expense, you could buy all these domain names, you know, website names, and then a few years later, as the corporations got involved with the internet, they wanted to have these names, and they'd buy them from you, and some people made a lot of money. In fact, it still happens. I read, like, vodka.com. I think someone had made 70 grand. You spend a few bucks to have a site called Vodka, and someone else buys it from you for 70 grand. Now that's what I'm talking about. A few bucks to 70 grand. Wow. That's the kind of thing I'm looking for. But it doesn't happen every time. So here's another time. They were doing an auction for cell tower sites. I don't know the details, but in the Wild West of, you know, of wireless communication, before it was big and they started building those cell sites, the government had auctions, and Gary North had gotten in on this. Him and some other investors got in and bought cell sites. They made millions on it, right? No one had really knew about cell phones. It was the whole way of buying these things. Buying sites for a telephone that's wireless. But that was a big thing. No one knew about it, and it took a little bit of legwork to get involved. So here's another thing that came up in the last few years. And also another thing too is, in order to get into these things, you have to kind of put your way of thinking and ideology on the shelf. Like, you said, hey, let's buy, people are saying, you're buying website names, something that's not real, an unrealistic, you're buying fantasy, you're spending a couple bucks to buy www.coke.com. What are you, crazy? You're throwing a few, I mean, so you don't know what's going to be the home runs, right? So you might do a lot of these little things, right? And they won't break the bank, right? You know, buying domain names didn't break the bank. Probably buying, you know, buying gold and silver when it was, you know, gold's at 240, it did cost some money, but the upside was huge. So another thing was actually Bitcoin, right? You know, in principle, in theory, I didn't want to touch them. But if they're like, under $1, it's like, hey, throw a couple $100 in, right? That's the kind of thing, right? Where there's ideology, right? My ideology when they came out was like, no, the whole point is hard money, hard assets. But as a speculation, it was like, hey, but right now people say, oh, you could buy right now. Well, you kind of lost the lion's share of it. And then it becomes a trade. Yeah, the price could go up, but once it becomes easier to get these things, like when those Bitcoins first came out, it took some effort and know-how and more legwork to get on it. Once there's sites up that make it easy for you, then you can be assured the easy gains are gone. I guess another example was literally in the Wild West, when there's like no one living in California. Some visionaries bought the land up around Los Angeles. Boom. In a few decades, they made millions and millions because the people moved out there and whatever. That's the kind of visionary thing I'm looking for. So the alternative media will have much more clues to these things and how to find these things. So a lot of people watching out there, they all have crazy ideas. I like the crazy ideas because some of those crazy ideas become millionaire ideas, right? So Mr. Millionaire Series, this YouTuber has a millionaire series. This is a good topic maybe you could talk about. If you're looking for that visionary, almost crazy idea to your friends and family that turns out to be a big winner. But you also got to be patient because it doesn't happen every year. And also, you don't go all in because what happens is some of these are failed ideas. There are examples of things like this that didn't work out and you just lost a couple $100 or a few $1,000. And if you got a diversified portfolio, it's, hey, you might throw 10% of your portfolio, 5%, I don't know, into these things that might go somewhere, like cell tower sites or domain names. But that's what I'm getting at. So I like ideas. So send me your ideas and thanks for helping me.